The Lorax is a dreary tale of a boy who lives in a polluted town and ventures out to find the answer as to why the trees which once flourished are now gone. He finds his answer when he visits the Onceler, a creature who lives in an isolated house, who will tell the tale of the truffula trees to anyone who comes with the correct payment. The Onceler tells the story of when he arrived in what was once a beautiful place, with all sorts of wildlife and millions of trees. He found the trees to be perfect for his invention, the thneed, which he said would be what everyone needed. After cutting down a tree, a creature called the Lorax appears and warns him against cutting down any more. He doesn't heed the warning, and after selling the thneed, begins to cut down the rest of the trees. It's a quirky, charming cautionary tale with strong environmental overtones and a subtle message of hope. Oh, wait, sorry, that's the Dr. Seuss story. The Lorax is a tale of a boy who decides to travel outside of his town to get a tree to impress a girl who's way too old for him. There are a lot of badly written over-the-top musical numbers, and Danny DeVito is a small mustachioed ball of fuzz. As you can probably tell, I didn't really like this movie. But before I go into all of the ways this film goes wrong, I'll talk about the few things that it does right. The film is nice to look at, and there are one or two good jokes. I, like most people, was skeptical about Danny DeVito in the role of the Lorax, but honestly, he's probably the best part of this film. And as annoying as the animals looked in previews, they were also pretty likable and fun. Betty White is also enjoyable as Ted's grandmother, and a lot of the stuff with the Onceler in his older state is alright too. Unfortunately, none of these things can save what is not only a poorly executed film, but occasionally a somewhat insulting one. Prior to going and seeing this movie, I saw the Colbert Report making fun of the SUV commercial and the 70 product tie-ins. Talk about shooting yourself in the foot. But I didn't expect for the commercial to play before the movie. Lesson number one, guys, if you're making a film with an environmental message, do not use it for a car commercial.
All the truffula tufts off the trees by the lake, they're comfy and thick as the thick ironies of the Lorax and Seuss hawking big SUVs.
Also, while the original Dr. Seuss story was an environmental tale, it did not feel preachy or in your face due to its subtlety and because it didn't over-villainize the Onceler, the person responsible for cutting down the trees. Illumination's film, by contrast, adds a villain, Mr. O'Hare, who sells fresh air to the people of Thneedville. An entirely unnecessary character, as he barely serves a purpose except to provide an exciting climax and to give the audience someone to root against. Also, the film ruins any moments that might have been effective by putting really awful musical numbers over them. There is a scene in this movie near the beginning where the main character first leaves the town and sees a vast ruined landscape with the tree stumps, as well as a scene later on in one of the flashbacks where all of the animals are leaving the once beautiful valley when the last tree is cut. These two scenes are far, far more effective than songs like How Bad Can I Be?, which try far too hard to be hip and come out soulless and vacuous. And speaking of vacuous, the actual Dr. Seuss story ends on a hopeful note with the Onceler giving the boy in the story the last seed, which leaves far more of an impact than the lengthy chase scene in the final musical number in the film, which then has the nerve to finish off with a Dr. Seuss quote. So at this point you may be wondering if the movie stands out alright on its own, disregarding the Dr. Seuss book and the fact that it sells out with product placement. And the answer to that is no. It's going to be hard for a lot of people to look past the fact that this butchers the source material, given that Dr. Seuss is one of the most beloved writers of all time. But if you can, the film is still not all that great. It drags on at points, the songs, as I've said, are really bad, and only a handful of the jokes work. Part of the film actually comes off as somewhat boring. The villain is dull, and the story really should have spent less time with the main character, because given that the majority of the story takes place in the past, the stuff from the present comes out as kind of extraneous. I don't understand why this couldn't have just been about a boy wondering about the trees. Why did they need to add in the girl? She's not even in the movie for very long. On a positive note, the Paranorman and Frankenweenie trailers aired before the film, as well as the new trailer for The Pirates, all of which look far more promising than this movie. But when your previews are more entertaining than your feature presentation, something went wrong somewhere. I imagine your kids will probably like the parts of it with the Lorax. Some of the little kids in the theater seem to enjoy at least those scenes, but overall I'd just say skip this one.
You have been warned.